A new Wordle puzzle is online. Click on the link to play.
Listening to the following video may give you clues. Please like and share the videos.
Polar bear shot dead in Montreal. On Friday morning, a polar bear was shot dead in the Madeleine Centre neighborhood near Montreal's airport.
Police had warned residents to stay away from the bear and to call 911 if they saw it. The bear had been seen wandering the streets of the community near the airport.
It was later killed by MFFP agents. The bear had recently been seen in the Madeleine Centre neighborhood, which is close to the airport.
Tim Treadwell was a polar bear enthusiast. Treadwell, a polar bear enthusiast from Kodiak, Alaska, was killed with his girlfriend Amy Huguenard in a deadly confrontation in August of 2014.
The pair had spent the previous summers at Katmai National Park protecting polar bears and were on their way to a remote campsite when they stumbled across a dead grizzly. The bear and Treadwell were discovered after Willie Fulton, a Kodiak air taxi pilot, found the pair in the wilderness.
Treadwell was an avid bear fan who spent most of his time in the park, searching for a female polar bear with his girlfriend. He had become very detached from the modern world, and his girlfriend believed him to be more comfortable with bears than humans.
The bears had become his friends and he became a drug addict. After a near-death experience with an overdose of heroin, Treadwell decided to leave the human world and explore nature.
Treadwell was a celebrity in the community, and people were amazed by his videos of polar bears in the park. However, his claims about poachers were false and the camera never lied to him.
However, he did find a wooden structure that resembled a football goalpost. The Park Service later admitted that it was a skinning post.
Polar bears live solitary lives. Once a social animal, polar bears usually lead solitary lives, though the male is occasionally seen nursing his cubs and may recognize him.
Once a cub is born, the polar bear and the mother go their separate ways. A polar bear's maternity den was designed to resemble a natural den, but it also features cameras that allow the public to view the mother and cubs without disturbing them.
When polar bears first entered residential areas, they were primarily found in the Hudson Bay region. They were a calming sight, but their numbers have been on the decline since they ventured into the area.
The polar bear population is divided into 19 subpopulations and lives solitary lives except for mating season. After venturing into a residential area in the 1990s, the bear's habitat is at risk due to human activity and exploration for oil and gas.
Polar bears spend most of their lives on the sea ice, where they feed on seal. When the ice isn't available, they can find shelter in land dens.
Pregnant females make dens on shores near the coast. Because polar bears are good swimmers, they can swim long distances between land and sea ice.
Even their cubs need to swim between floating ice islands during a storm to avoid freezing and becoming dehydrated. They are solitary creatures.
Polar bears have been considered the most dangerous animals, capable of taking off a man's arm with one swipe. The creatures also frequently feed on the carcasses of whales and dead fish.
The smell of humans makes them particularly attracted to people, and they may even eat trash near human settlements. As such, they are often shot dead in cities where they might inflict damage.
Normally, polar bears stay on their own and rarely come into contact with people. They usually go into residential areas in search of food.
Sometimes, they venture into residential areas but are usually shot dead or captured. In some cases, humans have even shot the bears dead.
Whether you're a wildlife lover or just curious about the polar bear's behavior, you'll be able to find a photo of a dead polar bear that's been snapped by a homeowner. The only time polar bears have ventured into residential areas is when a human shoots them.
Although polar bears generally live alone, they will form family groups during mating, raising cubs, and finding food. In some cases, polar bears will even play with each other if they find another human to feed upon.
Despite their solitary nature, polar bears are still considered a threat to human life. They do not hibernate during the winter months.
If you are wondering why polar bears don't hibernate during the winter months, you might be surprised to know that this is not true at all. Whether they are pregnant or not, they still give birth during the winter months, and this is because they are busy stocking up on milk for their cubs.
Unlike other bears, polar bears don't hibernate. The answer is complicated by differences in the genetics, habitat, and adaptations of polar bears and brown bears.
The main purpose of hibernation is to conserve energy and keep the body warm, and genetic functions related to heat play a key role in this. Nitric oxide is a key factor in energy metabolism, and polar bears produce less of this gas than do black and brown bears.
Although polar bears do not hibernate, they do spend a lot of downtime on snow piles and ice. When temperatures drop below freezing, they might seek shelter in a den or a hut.
The latter can save the bear's body heat. True hibernation occurs only in endothermic beings, and non-endothermic animals are only dormant for a short time.
Therefore, adult polar bears do not build dens. They are vulnerable to extinction because of sea ice loss.
Scientists estimate that polar bear populations may decrease by up to 80 in the next 35 years. The IUCN doesn't classify the species as endangered, but their assessment doesn't consider the extinction risk over a longer time frame, so that their future may be even more uncertain.
However, it is important to note that climate change could cause subpopulations of polar bears to cross extinction thresholds. The loss of sea ice has a dramatic effect on polar bears' ability to find prey.
They feed primarily on ringed seals that graze on the edge of the ice. Without sea ice, polar bears would have to forgo 2/3 of their annual energy supply.
They also have fewer opportunities to hunt their prey, resulting in a deterioration in body condition and reduced growth rates. Adult female polar bears are thinner, with less muscle mass, and their cubs are smaller.
A recent report from National Geographic showed that the bears are emaciated, even if the animal's condition was not caused by climate change. Researchers were unable to tell whether the bear was sick or just old.
Scientists have said that future studies are needed to determine whether the projected reductions in polar bear populations match the actual numbers. This information is particularly important for policymakers and scientists trying to determine whether polar bears are truly threatened by climate change.
They have lower reproductive rates. The slowest growing mammal in the world, the polar bear has a limited growth potential.
Male polar bears reach reproductive maturity at 8 to 10 years of age, while females reach reproductive maturity at 5 to 6 years of age. During this time, females typically have litters of 1 or 2 cubs, weaning them at 2 to 3 years of age.
Despite these slow growth rates, polar bears are often found in a breeding season, once every 2 or 3 years, and female polar bears are generally able to reproduce within the same year that they wean their cubs. In addition, this low fertility rate makes it difficult to rapidly repopulate a declining population.
Studies have shown that female polar bears that dent on land are more successful in producing cubs. This is likely due to earlier access to prime foraging habitats when the sea ice is gone.
Similarly, female polar bears that dent on land tend to be more fertile than those that dent in the sea. This is not an unusual trend, as 84 of female polar bears in the sea dent on land.
However, these figures have not changed significantly since the 1980s. They are not able to successfully raise cubs.
Usually, polar bears do not leave the den of their mother until they are at least 2 weeks old. Until then, they are entirely dependent on their mother.
Once they open their eyes, they will explore their den and begin eating solid food that the male has brought back to them. As the months pass, they will begin exploring the outside world, but will not leave the den until they are at least 2 to 3 years old.
In addition to killing females and their cubs, these lions also kill and injure resident males. After venturing into residential areas, males rarely survive beyond 2 or 3 years.
This is the primary reason why a lone male without siblings or cousins will team up with a female to protect his cubs. Then he will be isolated.